So, I was sitting around trying to burn through a pile of protein bars I had sitting around. You know, it's double XP weekend. And I had a conversation with a few people standing around about what their favorite quests were. And it got me thinking, what were my favorite quests? Why? What made them so good? After a bit more time, I started to just try and put a list together. And this recording is the result of that list making, along with some reasoning as to why I love the quests I selected. Do keep in mind this is my opinion, and some of these quests could be better in my memory of when I did them than they are currently. That isn't my fault, though, and hopefully that isn't the case with any of these. But hey, I don't know. Anyway, on to the list. Number 10 is already kind of breaking my rules a little bit. It's two quests, Stolen Hearts and Diamond in the Rough. These two quests are my 10th favorite quest in the game, and they're a rework of Prince Ali Rescue, which, when reworked, was split into two quests that tell one story. But together, they're excellent, and were made at a time when Guthix was trying very hard to make stellar novice-level quests. In fact, there's several more of those types of quests on my list. But, onto this one. Guthix took a simple, fairly dull quest that had been around for ages and made something really excellent with it. Going so far as to introduce a mascot earlier than the series used to was pretty ballsy, but it was well worth the risk, as she gained a lot of character, had some really fun story, and was shown as a really competent villain that didn't entirely lose in this encounter. We were forced to give up the Carid Ib gemstone to her. The story even did some heavy lifting for later parts of the story, setting up stuff that happens further down the road and even teasing at where the story will go next. The signature hero, Ozan, also features in this story and is a ton of fun, really proving that in the right hands, that being like Rowley here, the signature heroes are a great cast of characters with a ton of potential. The events and puzzles of the story were great. The combat, while pretty basic, was still pretty cool, and I definitely imagine it'd be a ton of fun for lower level characters. And overall, these two quests just took on a great theme and really great logic. Number 9 for me is Broken Home. Another novice level quest. Broken Home is something a little different. Actually, a lot of different, like really, really out there different. Broken Home is Guthix making an edge-of-your-seat immersive horror quest with built-in replayability and speedrunning modes. And this quest just oozes atmosphere, and does it in a creepy, unsettling environment that builds its story slowly and unveils a truly different and bloody history for the area. It plays with a lot of horror tropes, but manages to use them in the right ways, resulting in a really great tale that ties into the game world a lot more than one might expect. Mentions of Majrat and the Zerosian Empire actually adds a ton to the story, and the ending is unexpected, but a surprisingly fun twist. The puzzles in this quest are incredible, and while there's no direct combat, just the danger you're in any second is so fantastic and really sits you on the edge of your seat. Number 8 for me is the Death of Chivalry. Yet another novice tier quest, interestingly. This rework of Black Knight's Fortress is the absolute best thing Guthix has done with the signature hero so far. This time it's Sir Owen. And the atmosphere, character work, and storytelling that was done with this quest is so impressive. Monstew's immense work in humanizing, and maybe even villainizing, Saradomin led to a dark quest with loads of spectacular ties to the outer world, setting up what will hopefully be an excellent series as well. Beyond Sir Owen's really entertaining character, we get a ton of great villain work, not only from the Kinshra cast in the first half of the story, but from the primary villain, Dawn, as well, who plays Victim so well and reveals her true power in a really wonderful twist. Her ties to the Sithareed Abbey was a great shout-out, as were the reference to the witch's original role in Black Knight's Fortress. But from the really fun puzzles to the intense boss fight, the great lore and character, and the really clever setting up for future story, this quest managed to do so much right with such a low-level quest that it really provides quality for players of all level and knowledge. Number 7 on my list is The World Wakes. Everyone knows this quest. This is the quest that Guthix died in. Honestly, most of this quest isn't all that amazing per se. It's a fairly basic entry into the dungeon crawler style of quests that Guthix was making around this time. However, Mod Anna's writing on this quest elevated it to something else entirely. The boss fights were rather imaginative, and led to the really fun hard mode bosses in the God Wars dungeon. The puzzles were pretty solid too, with the ball puzzle being really clever, and it had a lot of depth. The sheer amount of characters in this quest really could have spelled disaster though, but was well tempered by making sure they all felt valuable and unique in a good way. Nobody felt wasted. But the thing that really puts this quest so high on my list really is how it all ends. The death of Guthix by Slisky's hand, The scenes with him on Narragan, his speech, and the launch of the 6th Age as the Edict's break was just mind-blowing. The stories it has set up are huge in scope, but his death was so huge but so deeply personal that it really affected me. It's one of the few times I've been really shocked by a death in RuneScape, and it really made me feel. 6th on my list, another novice actually, is One Piercing Note. The mention of the Sithreed Abbey and the Death of Chivalry wasn't just a shout-out. One Piercing Note is such a spectacular quest and definitely something every member should play for the story. The immense work that went into the characters and the deep mystery this quest builds was so excellent. The creepy Ripper Demon story was a ton of fun, the emotional storyline was well handled, but my god, this quest's music! It's absolutely amazing and was the focal point of this quest during development. The sheer quality of the sound design, featuring amazing orchestration and a full choir, creates such an impressive atmosphere to this quest, and it makes it easily one of the best in the game. Not to mention just the already great puzzle elements as you investigate around the Abbey and slowly piece together the backstory of the tragic Sister Anna. Play this quest. Number 5 on my list is Dimension of Disaster. Maybe it's a pattern, but the Guardians development team got onto this list a lot. Mod Rowley, Mod Stu, and Mod Osborne were 3 of the main writers for this Scrum team, though Osborne has since moved on to be a director for the game. Well deserved. Dimension of Disaster is one such quest made by the Guardians, and boy is it stellar. However, this quest is a bit weird to discuss. While it's one of the best, it requires knowledge of a ton of other quests as well as the history of the game to really appreciate. Luckily, as a long-term player, this quest really hit the sweet spot for me, and managed to deliver both a heartfelt homage to the past 199 quests before it, but also a hilarious romp through a dark and ruined world. With lots of old-fashioned mechanics and tons of snarky and jokes abound, this quest really succeeded left and right in making something memorable and unique. The characters were brilliant, funny, and oddly flawed. Zemmer as a core villain and all of his extreme narcissism was beautiful to behold. The puzzle elements were exciting and interesting, and the combat was beautiful. This quest took every opportunity to turn things on its head and succeeded at every element. Number 4 on my list is Blood Runs Deep. Up until 2015, this quest was easily RuneScape's darkest and most brutal quest. The finale for the long-running war with the Dagonoths, this quest saw us finally take action in this brutal fight and go on the offensive. Diving into dreams while preparing for this epic battle, we went off against the nasty creatures from the deep and died. Us, the hero, we were actually killed in battle. In one of the ballsiest moves in a quest ever. Now yes, sure, we returned to life, but even the way we died was a huge move and set up this extreme danger we were in. The stunning deaths of Brand and Astrid after the defeat of the Dagonoth Mother really set a sting to the victory at the end and gave us a bittersweet ending to this violent and dark story. There were minimal puzzles in this quest, and even the ones that we had were interesting and varied, but the combat in this quest is so strong. As with most of the Fremnit quests, combat did take a main focus, but man, just diving through waves of creatures assaulting us to face off with the epic second Dagonoth Mother, and not even being able to kill her, just being forced to trap her was truly interesting, and it really set a great tone for this quest. Number 3 on this list is While Guthix Sleeps. What would be a best quest list without this masterpiece? The first Grandmaster, the introduction of the Stone of Jas, Lucian's rise to power, an epic trek across the known world, and some huge diving into mystery resulted in one of the greatest quests ever. This quest is huge, this quest is epic, and it has everything. Even nearly 10 years after it was released, 8 as of writing, it still stands up amazingly and is completely playable on all counts. This quest is an absolute must-play for everyone. The characters from all our adventures join forces in war, and the many deaths near the end are just nasty, creating such a feeling of power and urgency for Lucian. Blood Runs Deep used this to its advantage as well, but While Guthix Sleeps just did it so solidly. In fact, the quest above this one does it as well, even better, but I'll talk about that when we get there. But beyond the story While Guthix Sleeps presents, it does a great series of complex puzzles that really make you think, and a pretty solid lore-filled fight at the end. Few quests manage to pile on so many epic moments in just one story and make it all work, but boy, this one does it. So number 2. What the hell beat while Guthix sleeps, you might be asking? I do indeed have 2 more quests that managed to dethrone that giant, though. The first is one of our newest quests, and is a quest from one of the longest running series in the game. And interestingly, this one's also from the Guardians team. That quest is the Lord of Vampyrium. What a quest. It is absolutely fucking brutal. Pardon my language, it deserves it. When I mentioned a quest that goes above blood runs deep and while Guthix sleeps, it was this. The violence and death is bloody and nasty. Lord Draken is ruthless and formidable, and the slow-moving escape from him, the sheer desperation we resorted to escape his chase, the blood, the fighting, the freaking meat. It all came together at the ending twist that was slowly seeded throughout, that we were trapped on Vampyrium. The puzzles were brilliant, the fights were difficult and nasty. The emotional impact was huge, and that final battle with Draken was so excellent. It really felt like he was toying with us, and then slowly grew more and more agitated before attacking me all out. The ending with Venescula was perfect, and while an unexpected twist was well done. This quest had everything I wanted to see in a Myreiki quest and more, blowing all the previous very good Myreiki quests out of the water. This quest was a masterclass in atmosphere, and is a must-play for any fans of darker stories. So before we move on to the number 1 spot, let's go ahead and hit up a couple honorable mentions. Let's say 5 for a clean 15. Number 11 would be The Chosen Commander. I'm almost surprised I didn't manage to fit it somewhere into the actual top 10, and I'd originally had it sitting at number 5 when I was putting together a shortlist. But as I was putting quests together, it just kept getting bumped down until it fell out of the top 10 entirety. This quest is great, and it's a really great finale for the Cave Goblins and for Xanix's story. That fight against the Bandos Avatar at the end really created such a feeling of defiance and was a great entry. Its slot number 12 would be The Branches of Darkmire, the previous Myreiki quest before the Lord of Vampyrium. Modiana's first for the company, too. This quest just created such a dark atmosphere as we dove into the heart of the vampire lands. Really great quest, and the fight at the end is beautiful. And 13th would be, kind of cheating again, Rune Mysteries and Rune Memories, the Ariane rework, not the original Rune Mysteries. This quest is beautiful visually, the sound design is awesome, and the story it tells of the Wizard's Tower and its backstory was so excellently done. At slot 14 is another recent quest, The Light Within, and the story of putting Saren back together. Traveling across the world to gather fragments of this destroyed goddess was excellent, but finally getting to go to the elven homeland and meeting some lost clan members was amazing. But really, interacting with Saren was the highlight of the quest for me. And finally, at 15, is the Temple at Sentistan. I'm not really a big Zerosian myself, but this story was hype-filled. It set up so much for Ritual of the Majorat, which was a good quest, just not top 15 for me. And it almost felt like just that perfect culmination of all of the Majorat stuff up until then. The rewards were excellent and are still relevant for everybody today, but the gameplay in that quest was amazing. So that's my top 15, ignoring number 1, which is coming up right now. My number 1 quest, the coveted first spot. And this one might come off a bit unexpectedly, honestly, but this is the single quest I find myself absolutely loving every time I think back on great content. That quest is Do No Evil. This quest really has it all. It combines the best of the Desert series with the depth of the Apatol lore, dives deep into the history of the desert, and fleshes out so much of what the Desert series is going to be about. It cleverly framed the story to be much more simple, and then brutally murdered the monkeys we brought to the desert, cultivated their colonies, set up, and then revealed in a massive twist that Atmekan herself was partially to blame. When Amasket's influence with the 3 mockeries of Atmekan's senses are revealed, it really gave a great moment of horror. Finally rescuing and saving Atmekan was a perfect ending as well, but the sheer amount of history we dove into with this story made it all feel worth it. We could deep dive into the desert, how it came to be what it is today, and Amasket's conflict with the 4 god aspects of Tumakin was fascinating to learn about. Beyond just the excellent story though, the mechanics are all spectacular. The chalk ice puzzle is difficult, but a lot of fun, while a bit grindy after the quest, but that's a different story. As are the ones with the 3 wise monkeys. The combat is amazing, and the 3 unique and interesting boss fights really wonderfully revisit past locations from quests in a great blast through the desert series. And even the rewards are great, with the Ava's Alerter back piece, the handy crime mullet, and some nice new thieving options. The secret at Meccan Tomb is really cool too. This quest really has it all, and is the best entry in what I consider the best series in the game, setting up a really interesting future. So, that's my top 10, plus some honorable mentions. What'd you think? Were there any pressing quests I missed in my list? What are your favorites? Please, let me know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Thanks so much for watching, and keep an eye out for more quest-related content. I'm still slowly working on a series of actual reviews for every quest ever released, fingers crossed I actually get stuff done on that, and considering doing a top 10 worst quests ever released as well. I've been Amasket, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you!